Mom's gonna watch this and say, who raised you? You did, Mama. The wind is absolutely howling today, so I apologize in advance. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bacaloo Cottage. Today we are continuing our holiday video series at Rock Recipes, and we are making a true Christmas classic. We're making an old-fashioned dark English fruitcake. There's always a great debate about fruitcake, people who prefer dark fruitcake or light fruitcake. I'll let you in on a little secret. I am not the biggest fan of dark fruitcake, but I respect it, and I'm gonna make it for you today because it really is kind of a traditional recipe that is worth holding on to. And of course, if you love it, you love it. I know my mom loves it a lot, so I'm going to be bringing these fruitcakes over to her after this video is complete. So today we're actually going to start over on the stove. We're going to start with a boiled mixture of our dried fruits and butter and some other yummy things to get it all incorporated and started. So let's head over to the stove to start.
Welcome to voiceover mode. Here in this bowl I've got my dried fruits prepped for the stove. So I'm starting here on the right with 1.5 cups of dark raisins, 1.25 cups of dried chopped prunes, 1.25 cups of dried currants, 1.25 cups of dried chopped dates, and 1.25 cups of golden raisins. Now over here on the stove I'm going to start by melting down 3/4 of a cup of butter. And then once we're all melted down, I'm going to go ahead and add that fruit mix. To that, I'm adding 1 cup of dark brown sugar, just kind of breaking it down into the mix. And then I'm adding 1/2 cup of strong black coffee. You could also use a liqueur, a coffee liqueur if you'd like. And of course, the juice and zest of 2 fresh oranges. And then I'm going to go in and finish with 3/4 of a cup of molasses. Now once I've got everything in the pot, I'm just going to incorporate it as best as I can, and then we're going to leave it to boil for about 10 minutes. You want to bring it to a gentle rolling boil as you see here, and then let it simmer very gently for 10 minutes until we are ready to take it off. There we go.
Okay, great. So now that I have my boiled fruit mixture cooled down off of the stove, I've let this sit, I guess, for about 45 minutes, an hour, but really 30 minutes or so should do. It has thickened up quite a lot. It's kind of like a sticky, jammy texture. So now we're going to go ahead and start adding in our other ingredients to assemble this fruitcake. So the first thing I'm going to do to add to this boiled mixture is add 3 beaten eggs. It's important to beat the eggs before you put them into this mixture because, as I said, it's quite thick, and when you're breaking up the whole eggs, a little tougher, not worth the extra work. Perfect. So now that I've incorporated the eggs into the mixture, just setting that aside for a moment, we're going to work on our dry ingredients. Here in this bowl, I have 1 1/3 of a cup of flour. To that, I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, as well as 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And here I've got our spices that we're going to add to the fruitcake. So I've got a mix here. I've got 2 teaspoons of powdered ginger, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of allspice, 2 teaspoons of nutmeg, and 1 teaspoon of cloves. So just sifting together our dry ingredients. It really does smell like Christmas when you make a fruitcake. You've got kind of all of the beautiful mix of spices similar to what you see in a gingerbread, then that old-fashioned dark flavor of the fruit mix. Very nice. Okay, so bringing back our wet mixture, I'm going to go ahead and add our dry ingredients. One thing to note, there's actually ground nuts in this recipe, which I forgot to purchase, and I don't have a food processor here, so I cannot grind them. I compensated just by adding a couple of extra tablespoons of flour. If you want to add the ground nuts, go for it. So I'm just gonna gently fold the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients, and this is going to be a very thick batter. Okay, so before the flour is fully incorporated, I'm going to go ahead and add our nuts and our fruit. Here I've got 1.5 cups of toasted pecans, and I threw in a handful of almonds too because why not? These I toasted before I'm putting them in here because that's going to give it kind of the fullest, nuttiest flavor. So along with the nuts, then of course we've got our next round of candied fruit. So here I have 1 cup of mixed fruit. You can also use candied citrus peel as well. I couldn't get my hands on any because everyone is going mad for dried fruit this year and there's shortages, of course. So 1 cup of mixed fruit, 1 cup of glacé cherries, roughly chopped. Okay, now we are going to stir our fruit and nut mixture into the rest of the batter. I want to make sure all of the flour is incorporated from the bottom. Cool. So, next step. So, for this recipe, you can pretty much use any large pan you want. You can kind of use a big 10 or 12-inch springform pan. I'm going to use 2 loaf pans. I like using loaf pans for a lot of holiday cakes because if you are giving them away for gifts, it's a perfect size for it. Or if you are kind of keeping these in the freezer and pulling them out as you go, you can actually cut them into pieces before you freeze them and then just pull out enough for however many people you want, which I think is pretty convenient. So today we're going with 2 loaf pans. These are just kind of standard size, and I'm using aluminum because I find this is my favorite thing to bake with. It gives me the most consistent and predictable bake. So I've just greased these well. Now what I'm going to do is transfer the mix into the pans. You can feel free to fill the pans quite full. It won't make a difference. Now I just want to make sure that both of our loaves are even. We are at the fun part of the process. We're going to decorate the tops, make these kind of look festive and old-fashioned before we pop them in the oven. So here I've just got some additional glacé cherries and some extra almonds and pecans as well. So I'm going to alternate the cherries, red and green, and then alternating some pecans and almonds down the side. And I'm making sure my nuts are kind of pretty nuts on the top, whole nuts. So our fruitcakes are now ready for the oven. The bake time is really going to depend on what pan you are using. So if you're using kind of all of this batter in one larger springform pan, that can take anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 hours. Because I am splitting this up into 2 smaller loaves, I suspect it's going to take less time. I'm going to go ahead and check these after an hour and see where we're at, but I could need up to 90 minutes. We are baking today at 300 degrees, so this is kind of lower than you typically see for any other kind of cake, but that's because it's not a normal cake, it's a fruit cake. So of course, with any dark fruit cake, you can choose whether or not you would like to soak it in rum. My crowd always soaks it in rum, obviously, so we're going to use Screech today. Newfoundland Screech, you know it, you love it, maybe you hate it. So this gets soaked into the cake after it comes out, but while it's in the oven, I think a little tipple for some good luck in the baking process wouldn't go astray. No? Cheers.
So with a little extra good luck, our cakes are out of the oven. I let these cool completely in the pan before I started trying to take them out. And here you'll see me poking some holes with a fork into the top of the cake. And this is to help soak up all of that nice rum. So in total, I'm putting 2-ish ounces of rum into each cake, just kind of pouring into those holes. And now what I'm doing is flipping them over after a couple of minutes, rinsing and repeating over on the other side, basically so that the rum is evenly distributed throughout the cakes. So just pouring the rest of the rum into the bottom of the cake. Again, it's about an ounce on the top, an ounce on the bottom for each, but to each their own. I will not judge.
As always, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this old-fashioned recipe. We have a couple of more videos coming your way before Christmas, so be sure to tune in. And I'm not trying any today because that fruitcake needs to soak up the rum. It needs to get better with age. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to respect the process. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful week, a wonderful holiday. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.